Good morning, Bobby Lee here with Hurricane Creek Farms. Today we're going to look at our spring forages, our cool season grasses and legumes that we utilize in our grazing operations. But we appreciate you watching. If you like what you see, give the video a thumbs up. We really appreciate that. Helps it gain visibility. I'm not going to pretend to know how the algorithm works, but we appreciate that. If you're subscribing, thank you. If you're not, we ask that you do so. But anyway, with that said, we'll dive right in. All right, and so today is the 1st of May. The spring forages, the cool season grasses and legumes that we use are really hitting their stride, really kind of at their peak. We've got grass and clover coming out our ears really on this farm. In this particular pasture I'm standing in right now, we just rotated them back in here yesterday. And they've been out of this pasture for about maybe closer to 3 weeks even. But you can see we've got plenty of grazing in here. And kind of as we start just talking about the different species, start with one of my favorites, just looking at clover. Obviously a lot of clover all through here. That being, of course, looking at the flower, white clover. And it is certainly, when you talk about just the clovers, the kind of the cornerstone of most grazing operations, I guess. There's a walk over here. I'm gonna show you. I believe we have all 3 varieties of clover, but here we have a lot of crimson. You'll see kind of has that dark red flower like that right there. This hillside over here, actually, yeah, you can still appreciate it. Really established well with the crimson over across all of it. Where else? We'll find some red clover. I don't know if we have any red in here specifically. None right here nearby as I want to talk about it. But I guess the white clover, it is a perennial. Again, it's probably, when people when you think of clover, that's probably the first one you picture in your head. Just the most, probably widely distributed, certainly in this part of the country. Again, it is a perennial. Crimson is actually an annual clover. We never do, seed it in here. You can see it's already, flowered, put out a seed head, it will reseed itself. We have never had to do that on this pasture. And really, as we're talking about the crimson, and it is still really pretty, I think you can probably appreciate that in the video. If we wanted to film or you wanted to take pictures for the pure beauty of those flowers, we're probably a couple of weeks, maybe even 3 weeks late. Really, we're blooming kind of at its peak bloom a few weeks ago. Here's a little bit of red clover. You can see it kind of has more of that purplish to pinkish flower, a little different leaf shape on it as well as compared to just right there. We have some white clover. Red clover, like the white, is a perennial, and I was actually reading an article about it just a week or 2 ago, and they kind of described it as always the bridesmaid to white clover being the bride, and that's probably a pretty fair way to say it. It just doesn't get the respect probably that it deserves, and doesn't get all the glory that the white clover gets, but really a important part of our forage program. As we talk about some grasses, orchard grass, one of the cool season grasses we utilize, and kind of as its name, I guess would imply probably how it got its name, right here underneath trees. Grows really well in shady areas. If we talk about red clover being the bridesmaid to white clover, I would say orchard grass is kind of the equivalent of that, being the bridesmaid to fescue when you talk about your cool season grasses. See lots and lots of fescue. Fescue's already headed out, which of course has that orchard grass there. But fescue you know, has some concerns. I guess it can be somebody might even say it's controversial in it being like the best cool season forage because of the issues with Fescue Toxicosis, which we'll talk a little more about. But when we mention that, I think it's important to mention that's why we love the diversity we have in these pastures. The benefits of some outweigh the negative aspects of others. They can have symbiotic relationships the way they really work together. Here's a nice shot. We got red clover. Look there. Red, white, and crimson all right there within 6 inches of each other. Fescue. Point out some rye. We did overseed some annual rye in here. Another really good cool season grass, but just being an annual. Another legume that we'll talk more about, vetch right there. Viney, those little purple flowers. One that doesn't get used very often or thought of as being a great forage, but it really can be. I'd gotten a little more interested in it last fall, and we actually did overseed some into some of these pastures in some targeted areas. Another one that does have potential for toxicity concerns. I believe it causes a photosensitivity, so make them more sensitive to the harmful effects of the sun. Not a problem we've ever really run into. It does not making up a large portion of these pastures, which really not much in here. But here's a good spot to kind of show you. They will selectively graze. The calves love the clover. And right through here, they've only been in here right at 24 hours. They have mowed down like these few, square feet, and not as targeting as much on the grasses, which you'll see the fescue has headed out. So it's a little more mature than is ideal for grazing, but kind of it is what it is. We just can't graze it quite as intensely as we want to sometimes. But walk over here where we can get a little better example of ryegrass, which they really notice they've hit it really hard since they've been in here. We'll overseed the rye in places where we're a little thin. Right around here where we do keep our feed bunks, you see, the ground gets pretty bare there, just from the heavy foot traffic from the animals, and so we just sow a little ryegrass down in the fall. There's a good example, seed head on the ryegrass. A lot of it, you see that's a lot of rye in there. They've bitten off. They will kind of selectively graze it over like fescue. The fescue is a little more fibrous, when you compare it to the annual ryegrass or orchard grass this time of year. So that is one issue with it. Fescue is just so darn tough, and from just a standability aspect, wide variety of soils, wide variety of conditions it can thrive in, and so it's hard to get away from it, even though, again, with the endophyte varieties, you do have to worry about some of the toxicity. Speaking of the vetch, here's where vetch is really going strong. And we did sow a little more of it kind of down this hillside here. And you see it's really doing well. I guess now would be a good time to talk about, well, why do we like vetch? Why do we like the clover so much? Beyond just the fact that the calves love, like we were just showing you up there, the palatability, especially the clover. But legumes, kind of by definition, they make their own nitrogen, can capture nitrogen from the atmosphere, and where they can utilize it, and then it's also there and available for the grasses to utilize, which for any of your grasses, whether it's fescue, orchard grass, any of your warm season grasses, they have to have nitrogen supplement to them, either in the form of fertilizer or using legumes to help add it to the soil. And so very nice symbiotic relationship there between your legumes and grasses. When we talk about fescue toxicosis, the biggest issue, especially for cattle with fescue, is the endophyte, and it's only the endophyte varieties that this applies to, causes vasoconstriction, so causes the blood vessels to constrict. Now, again, talking about symbiosis and the reason why we like a diverse grazing operation. Red clover, again, I keep pointing it out. Nice example right there. It is a vasodilator, and so again can counteract those side effects. To the other thing, just when you've got this wide range of forages, everything is kind of diluted out by the others. You know, it's like a lot of things in life. Anything in moderation is probably okay. I shouldn't say anything, but most things in moderation are going to be okay. Whereas anything to excess can be detrimental. And so grazing just a absolutely, you know, pure fescue stand, yeah, you're going to probably have issues. You notice, you know, poor animal performance is related to endophyte. When you have it more diluted out with your clovers, with your orchard grass, just your other forages, not as big of a deal. All right, as I've really been talking up clover and how much we love it and showing how selectively they grazed it just right over here, as we're starting to, you're really garnering an audience after they've finished up their little bit of morning feed we brought them. They, you might ask yourself, especially if you're a big fan of the TV show Yellowstone like I am, Bobby Lee, how can you graze clover like that without all your cows or stocker calves or whatever falling over dead from bloat? And I would say a lot of that, just specifically from TV shows, of course, they dramatize everything, over dramatize it, but it's really not a problem we've ever run into. And I guess I'm a little embarrassed to say that I know that definitely the clovers run that risk. Really, I guess any legume you do, but not a problem we've ever really encountered, knock on wood. And I don't know if that's more because we do, you know, we're not grazing straight stands of clover. You know, it's out here in a program. Well, guy, it was actually one of our bottle calves, which makes sense why he's right here trying to get in my pocket, that we had raised or bottle fed last winter or last spring. But yeah, not a problem we really run into. I don't know, out there in Montana, I would imagine they probably don't have clover like we do, and so maybe those cattle are a little more sensitive to it. But yeah, I think that the way they portrayed that in that episode is probably, you talk to an actual forage expert, not just some guy on YouTube that likes to talk about forages, probably tell you, yeah, it's probably not that feasible that's the way that would play out. Or what was it at the, I think it was the two brothers, the casino moguls that, you know, rented the airplanes and dumped out all the clover hay out there in the pasture, and then they ride up and find just the entire landscape littered with dead animals. And then I think they burn it off because they didn't want it going, you know, to seed and have clover there. The whole herd would have died the next year. And yeah, I think that was a lot of dramatization there. But my point is, clover does carry that risk of causing bloat in certain situations, and yeah, not a problem we run into. So I don't know that I necessarily have any direct pointers in terms of how to avoid that, other than, again, diversity, having it, you know, in a grazing, you know, situation with other grasses. Like I said, we rotated these pastures yesterday, and not everybody came through the gate right when we wanted them to, which a lot of times it works out that way, especially we've only had these calves for a few weeks. They haven't totally become bucket trained. But let's get up here, and I want to use my Jeep as a perch. I can get up here and try to get a head count of everybody and see. I counted them before we started filming. We were about 12 or 15 short, but I've seen a few more walk up. So we'll see how close we are to having everybody in here. Oh yeah, here's another really good example. A lot of orchard grass. And that seed head's on there when it makes it really easy to identify. Of course, you can't really tell on the video, but it just, when you feel of it, you know, as compared to the fescue, it is just a little softer leaf, not quite as fibrous as fescue. So easy to kind of appreciate how it is a little more palatable. But we're gonna ride around, see if we can find the rest of those calves. Just counted, we're 14 shy, yeah. I did a quick math in my head. 55 right here. I saw one or two more down the hill here, so they're technically in the right pasture. They're just not coming up to the feed block yet this morning. Oh, there's one right there. So it puts us at 56 in here. So a nice even dozen that are either in here somewhere hanging out, didn't come to the feed block, or more likely are still in the north pasture. But I need to go up there anyway, kind of show you what pastures that they've just been grazing for the last couple of weeks look like. But we'll go do that, and if by any chance they come through, we'll be able to shut the gate. See, they're all gathered around the mineral feeder, and it is empty, so I gotta bring a bag or two of mineral tomorrow, which they'll be fine for a day without it. Two, the gate's still up in another pasture, of course, so they can, and they're still feeding that mineral. I saw it yesterday, so if they're incredibly desperate, they can walk back over there. All right, and yes, there are a few of them that are refusing to cross the ditch here. Get over there and count and see if that is our all dozen of them. That's, let's see here, 2, 4, 6, 8, see at least 9. So let's see if we can account for all of them. We did account for every single one of them yesterday. We just knew there were 31 that didn't come through, so now we're down to at the most a dozen. But you see the ditch, not terribly wide, could be crossed. In reality, they can walk a little ways in either direction, and there's places where they don't even have to jump. They can just walk across, and they just weren't willing to do it. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. See 9 right there right now. That's another one of our next projects we got to do, is get that culvert back in there. I thought at one time I was just going to lay an old cattle guard that we have across it, because my only concern with getting that crossing back there so I could drive across it. Well, now it has become apparent that at least some of the calves aren't going to want to cross unless they can walk across, and of course they won't walk across the cattle guard either. So probably just going to have to get the culvert back out, get the tractor down here, and cover it back up, and hope it lasts for a while longer before it washes out again, because inevitably we'll get another big rain and whatnot. And I guess in a perfect world, we either get some kind of a solid bridge across there where they would still cross it and they could drive, or we just get a much bigger culvert that would last. I don't know. Neither one of those is something we can do very quickly, so probably just get that old other culvert in there at some point. Okay, so yeah, there's only 9 right here, so there's either 3 more in here somewhere else, or maybe there's 3 more over there that we have not yet seen. I don't know, we'll see if we can figure that out. But talk a little more about forages. This isn't a pasture they have been in for 2 or 3 weeks. And I guess too, see this yellow flowering plant, wild buttercup, ranunculus, I believe, not sure if that's how you say it, is the species, or the genus, I believe. I don't know. It's been too long since I've taken biology courses, but well, yeah, I believe that's the genus, ranunculus. But it's actually a toxic plant, a noxious weed. They really won't eat it, and so the toxicity is not a huge concern. I think it's very irritating to the mucous membrane, so it can cause ulceration in the mouth, throughout the GI tract. I really don't know where it ever becomes, a practical problem. See that mineral feeder? Yeah, still has some in it. Because, and I'll show you, we'll go back to the house here in just a little bit, check on the cow herd. We have like a world-class stand of buttercup, solid, where a lot of the cows are right now, and they still won't eat it. So we don't want them to eat it. They're out there because we do have a little bit of other grazing. We're trying to get them to finish up before we round up that pasture and get ready to plant our summer annuals, which we'll talk about more here in a couple of months. But yeah, that's probably the biggest weed problem we have this time of year, and I hate that plant. If you gave me a superpower to snap my fingers and do something, just instantaneously, I guess I'd probably choose to end world hunger or cure cancer or something like that, end world wars. But if it had to apply only specifically to pastures and grazing, it'd probably be to eliminate wild buttercup, because that, you can't spray for it without sacrificing your clovers. Anything that'll kill that, it being a broadleaf weed, which there's plenty of herbicides that'll kill it without killing the grasses, but you're gonna really put a hurting on your clovers. So the main reason why we don't do that. But you see this pasture, they really didn't graze this fescue very hard at all. They kind of selectively, yep, good example. Clovers mowed down. You see, look at my boot. Fescue, they didn't touch too much. So ideally, this fescue, as mature as it is, all headed out. I need to get in here and clip it back, make it start putting out. It'll be more palatable, and really, I guess that probably goes with any grass that you're grazing. Once it gets to the point, or even cutting for hay, once it gets to the point of putting out a seed head, it's kind of beyond the optimum maturity for a forage, for animal diet. But anyway, I don't see those other calves. Walking through this knee-high fescue, and the early morning dew is getting me soaking wet. So we're not going to stress too much about it. They were all here yesterday. Those other three probably either went through and just aren't showing up necessarily this morning, in the woods somewhere hanging out, or they may still be in here somewhere. But this group of calves has looked really good all year. We've had one that we've treated and darted with Draxin, and he really wasn't showing, not coughing, showing any respiratory signs. He was not like the others, kind of thing. He was kind of dragging back behind, never was coming up to the feed bunk at all. It was thin. He's one of those where I was like, yeah. I noted him a couple of times and said, if we don't go ahead and treat him, it's gonna be to that point where it's too late and you're gonna look back and kick yourself for not doing it. But yeah, been real happy with this bunch of calves. I'd be a lot happier if these few dudes would decide to pull their skirts down and jump this ditch, where I can shut the gate and keep them all in one spot. Nothing extra special to show you in this pasture, but just the grass looks so good in here. Couldn't help but stop myself. But you see, and I guess, yes, some out of orchard grass. It's heck mid-thigh deep on me. See a good example of, we got orchard grass, we got our rye, we got, again, it's red and then white clover. Just a great example right here. Some grass they really need to be grazing right now. It's getting to the point where it's going to be over mature too. But they haven't been in this pasture in probably, I won't say a month, but at least 3 weeks, maybe closer to 4. But kind of on the other extreme end of the farm from where they have been. We'll get them in here in the next few days, because it's actually where our catch pen is. Getting ready to get those heifers out of here. Should have already done that. May just hold them in this pasture for a couple of weeks, get the steers back on the other part of the farm. And of course, we've got our buttercup that's mixed in here, which when you got just a little bit like we've got in here, this pasture is not bad at all. We'll tolerate it. It's we're definitely not going to spray in here. Not enough of it to worry with. That's worth sacrificing the clover over. But we'll head back to the house and show you more what some of our poorer pastures look like, where the cow herd is. But those pastures are starting to come on a little better. All right, and so now we fast forwarded to the afternoon. We Wild Man, you can see over there behind me, had a soccer match this morning. So not long after we got done checking those pastures early, we had to get ready for that and had to do a few other little chores. So now here back at the house, and you can see what I talk about when I say we have a world-class stand of this buttercup. It's not quite as bad over here on this side of the bottom, We had a little better stand of our triticale. Now the triticale is pretty much non-existent out here. You still see it here and there, but they pretty well grazed it back to nothing. Had let them back in here for just the last couple of days because this balansa clover we're going to talk about is putting out, was offering some grazing, as well as it was a little bit of triticale. But as you can see, kind of this failed experiment with the winter annuals is one reason. We're going to go with a perennial cool season mix this fall, probably a fescue orchard grass clover mix. I don't know necessarily why we never could get triticale, or even we had some oats in a mix at one time. We actually did not plant the balansa clover this past fall. Maybe actually been a couple of years, but you can see it puts out a seed head similar to white clovers, and so it reseeds itself. So happy with it. The difference with it, what I guess the selling point on it, you know, compared to just your red clovers, your white clovers, is that it's supposed to be like a super nitrogen fixator, even more so than some of the others. But we'll pull some up here and see if we can see some of the nodules where those bacteria live that allow them to make their own nitrogen and then put it in the soil where it's utilized by other grasses as well. See here too, there's not a lot of great examples of it just because they've grazed it back so hard, but it's a little vinier than like traditional white clover would be. It can get really tall. I've seen it in spots where it, you know, it really grows up, where it can you know, grow on other plants. So I'm looking forward to, I think it'll, even when we plant that other mix in here this fall, we're still going to have some of that. No doubt that'll come back from seed. And unfortunately, we're going to have some of this come back from seed too, no doubt. But we in our perennial pastures more on this farm, these creek bottoms, we've been devoting to annuals, both doing a summer annual mix followed by winter annuals. We really don't have much cool season grass presence. We tried to get some clovers established and had some pretty good luck doing that, but not really much fescue or any orchard grass to speak of. So that's why we're going to plant that here in this bottom. That, along with the fact that the annuals have just kind of failed us. But anyway, we are going to plant sorghum Sudan grass, or Sudex, and some sun hemp here just in the next month. So I'll be on the lookout for that video. Yeah, probably coming sometime here within the next 3 or 4 weeks. All right, so I pulled up a couple to put here on the tailgate. And I don't know how well you can totally appreciate it. The ground's a little sticky right now, but you can see these little nodules right there at the tip of my finger on the roots. Yeah, there's some nice ones there, if you can really tell. Yeah, this ground's sticky like it is. It's hard to get the mud off of there. Yeah, you can really see some in there. But got a little vinier plant as you look than some of your other clovers. But one of the advantages, somebody keeps throwing beer cans in the back of my side by side, than just your traditional white clovers. But again, not really too good of an example of any triticale out here. You can kind of see a random one here and there, usually right beside some buttercup where they've left it out. But you can tell too, this is another good example of they won't really touch that buttercup. They've eaten everything else out here, but will not eat it. Cows are gathered up over there in the shade. It's one of those typical Tennessee spring days where I was bundled up in a hooded sweatshirt this morning, and now this afternoon you darn near get a heat stroke. You see wild man chose to go completely topless. But anyway, we that covers probably most of the cool season forages that we're really utilizing right now. Some annuals, some perennials, some different things. I guess as we move forward, watching for next videos, we're gonna be weaning some calves, all our foghorn calves, probably here, maybe tomorrow even, tomorrow or middle of the week. Probably plan on getting them processed and worked next weekend and get all that on video for you. Those are always good ones when we're working calves. But we're gonna get this Sudex planted in here. We're gonna spray this. We'll come in here and spray just Roundup or glyphosate terminate everything, which of course the triticale, what little bit there is about done. The buttercup is pretty much done. That's one thing about it. As bad as it looks right now, this is as bad as it will look, because it doesn't last once it warms up. And then we'll terminate everything that's out here, drop in here and plant that Sudex and sun hemp mix. But got a lot of stuff going on. Spring calving is over, and glad for that. Getting ready to turn the bull in. Actually, we'll turn him in probably just in the next few days as well. And again, today's 1st of May, so start having some kind of mid-February calves. But as always, we thank you for watching. If you're still with us, you must have liked it, so give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and remember, eat beef and God bless.